All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, of course. Got my partner in crime here. She's the real criminal. Puking on things, peeing on things, doing frustrated shits while I'm trying to do videos, etc. So let's see here really quickly. Some chats. Lolly Dolly Princess, good morning, Sticks from Valerico, Florida. Norm Fett, Clank from North Carolina. Russ Hanneman says Clank, and Morgan Hevron, good morning from Vermont. And apparently the fiddleheads are starting to pop up. Make sure to roast them off. They are delicious. I've had fiddleheads a couple of times, fresh picked. They were good. We've got a lot to talk about today, but first we're going to make sure that we're live on Rumble. Let me see here. The other cat's down there possibly going to disrupt the stream, so I'm nervous. I've got too many cats around. Yeah, everything is fine here. Let's see. Come on, Mr. Tarl, says Daniel Marika. I am live. Believe it or not. Yes, indeed. Anyway, we've got to talk about Elon Musk and the new revelations with regards to Twitter. That's the big news. I talked about it this morning. The American Spectator, a Trump-Desantis ticket can win in 2024. We'll be analyzing the likelihood and nuance of that at depth. And also, CBC right now is very, very salty about Twitter labeling them government-funded. They then changed the label on Twitter, and they didn't like the change either, so they're pausing their usage, like CBS did many moons ago. They paused it for, 3 or 4 days or something like that. It's going to be a funny time. There's some fun news today. BW, you think DeSantis trying to bow out of the primary with bad bill and save face by saying he wants Trump to have it because of ongoing Dem persecution? Again, we'll be talking about the idea of Trump-Desantis for 24. As always, I have to qualify this by saying while I prefer Trump, I don't have a personal problem with DeSantis, because otherwise I'm just adding into the dumpster fire of Trump v. DeSantis bullshit. And it is bullshit. A lot of it's coming from liberals that are trying to astroturf a fight between the two of them, but especially a fight between their various fans. The Defamation League. Dump all your plastic in the ocean for the hermit crabs. Yes, today we talked about the Pacific Garbage Patch, actually, and how science has realized now that it's created a unique ecosystem. All the flotsam and jetsam, like, plastic netting, and not really the nanoparticles, but the larger chunks of it, have created actually a Texas-sized platform loosely floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in which there's algae, there's hermit crabs, there are fish. It's basically like a floating coral reef at this point. It's creating verticality, more surfaces for algae to grow on. Of course, as long as it can get sunlight, means more opportunities for other animals to come in and then eat the algae, which is really, really strange. No matter what we do, we can never defeat Mother Nature. Neverson42 on Rumble. Morning, Sticks. Finally catching you live. Just want to say Doggo is greater than Kitty, but Kitty is fine too. I prefer Kitty over Doggo myself. There are some dogs that are really cute and intelligent and stuff, but, I like the little fur balls here. Cats in Rutland. Cats in Enschede. Cats everywhere. They're taking over the world. With toxoplasmosis, they don't have it, by the way. Cat piss still smells terrible to me, so I know that I'm not infected. So no worries. I won't be turning into a soy boy anytime soon. We'll get right into the news, though, with this first one. This one is important. Elon Musk reveals U.S. intel agencies had full access to private Twitter DMs, discloses new encryption feature. Yes, they are planning to encrypt or optionally encrypt all direct messages on Twitter, which makes it one step harder for your right to privacy to be abused. Of course, then they won't even be able to get a warrant necessarily for it. They'll have to keylog you or something like that, demand access to your devices. So they had better have actual evidence. What happened before Elon Musk took over Twitter is that we know this, we've got the Twitter file releases. It wasn't just intel agencies that were gathering info on Twitter, encouraging censorship, suggesting that people be demoted or banned, and apparently gathering people's DMs as well. It was people who are running for office, people who are not in law enforcement, people with no warrant, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the time, it doesn't seem that a warrant was actually issued, a grave Fourth Amendment violation. As I pointed out this morning, some people are coping by saying it's a private company, it can do what it wants. I would point out that just because you use FedEx instead of the U.S. mail does not mean that a random cop or a random politician can rifle through what you're sending to other people. And the same litmus should be applied here. If not for legal reasons, again, it's a gray area sometimes, depending on what the communicate is. Certainly it's unethical, it's unhelpful, it's not in keeping with the tradition of the United States, the Fourth Amendment, et cetera. The Fourth Amendment was not penned just to prevent the government from abusing you. It was penned out of a philosophical ideal. And this is why the First and Second Amendment, et cetera, we need to interpret them from that backdrop. What did the founders think? Why did they think it was important to have these amendments in existence? So the First Amendment doesn't say that Twitter can ban you for saying something that Twitter doesn't like. Is that the principle of the First Amendment, the reason why it was deemed important? Absolutely, yes. The Fourth Amendment should also follow suit. Spud Lee, rip Dick Clark. Oh, did he die? Entirely possible. I didn't even know he was still alive, actually. Dick Clark's still alive, supposedly. I'll be looking that up in a moment. Sebastian Monroe, I haven't had the chance to wish your daughter a happy belated birthday 4 days after mine. As a fellow Aries, I should warn, she may have inner fire. Oh, yes, she does. No worries about that. She can get spicy sometimes. Midwest Mystic, Cat. Miss Grimstock, hi Sticks, please post some recipes. I need some inspiration. I've thought about doing a cookbook or something like that. Let's see. Just a second here. I'm making sure that everything lines up. Oh, and also, Sigil Stone 17, garbage creating unique, potentially detrimental life forms. There's literally multiple Pokemon based on this idea. Yeah, imagine your hermit crab and all the algae that you eat is growing on tufts of slowly degrading plastic. It may cause some problems. But at least they're alive, though. They live a short, miserable existence before a pelican picks them off or something. The next news story, again, this is more analytic, so I'm going to do analysis. A Trump-Desantis ticket can win in 2024 if the former president can control his ego long enough to consider the future of the country. I don't know that he can. Donald Trump is an egotist. By the way, so too is DeSantis, although this doesn't really get into that. Here's the problem. There are some good things about the idea of a Trump-DeSantis ticket. MAGA has become consolidated, if you do that. There's no more anti-Trump MAGA movement. That would go by the wayside. That's helpful. It probably would be a decent independent draw, although I think that there are alternatives that are better. I'll get into, by the way, the alternatives with regards to a running mate. There are basically 4 of them at this point, as far as I can see. DeSantis would be one of those alternatives. While that's the case, DeSantis and Trump are both executive. And my feeling is that Trump would prefer to have somebody who is legislative or outside of politics, as opposed to gubernatorial, or at least having served in that capacity. Ron DeSantis clearly is an egotist and wants power too. What would end up happening is you would end up with Trump and DeSantis probably sparring. Trump would do what he naturally does. He did it to Pence too, and sideline DeSantis. DeSantis would chuff at that. You'd have almost a dysfunctional dynamic similar to what you have in the Biden White House. Of course, Kamala wants power too. She's a diversity hire, but she aspires to more than that. And Biden, especially Jill Biden, doesn't really like that. And there's squabbling that goes on between their staff. Oh, you're not making enough, overtures to the VP's office. You're not giving us enough resources. They were complaining about Air Force Two, actually, and the fact that Air Force One, it's like lavish food. It's very much 5-star experience. And Air Force Two, it's like, oh, here's some soppy sandwiches. And they were complaining about that, apparently, some of the staffers that work with Kamala. Okay, you've got your private plane. It's not the Ritz. You don't even get free booze. I'm sure Elizabeth Warren prefers to ride on Air Force One as opposed to Air Force Two as the result of that. Here's my feeling. There are effectively 4 possibilities for Trump for a running mate. Number 1 is Rand Paul. And I know that's a long shot. He's probably not even being seriously considered. He's probably being more considered for a Senate majority leadership slot or something like that, which is fine too. If he goes with Rand Paul, it shows that he wants to lurch towards the libertarian end of the GOP, which has a huge impact on right-wing independent voters. That would be an overture. If he goes with DeSantis, he's trying for a unity ticket. He's saying, look, we're unifying the GOP, enough of this bullshit. We're going to unify and go forward. We're a party. There's another party. We're going for it. We're going to compete for the independents. But within the party, you've sold your message already. Then there's Kerry Lake. Kerry Lake would be a symbol that he wants to go with core MAGA. This might alienate some of the, basically, they like Trump's ideas, but they don't like Trump sort of voters. Again, though, you probably get some independents aboard as the result of that. In fact, Kerry Lake, I think, could reach out into the center independents. And then you have dark horse, unknown individual, which is what he did with Mike Pence. It won't be Pence again. We know that. But taking up somebody who is not relatively well-known, you're saying, this campaign is mine. I'm subjugating the VP. The running mate is effectively just there for show. I'm running everything. I'm Donald Trump. Fucking vote for me. We're going to see where he goes with this. He could reach across the aisle and take up like a Gabbard or even an RFK Jr. as a running mate. I don't know how well that would work, but you could try it. There's all sorts of possibilities. Ramaswamy would be a possibility. That would fit into the other category, by the way, because he's at like 1% within the field. You could do worse. I think that possibly the best likely choice is Kerry Lake. That's just my own personal feeling. There are other alternatives. It'd be hilarious if he took up little Marco or something like that. Can you imagine Marco Rubio as vice president? How fucking derpy that would be. I don't think he's going to take anyone from the Senate, though. I think the Senate is too fragile and too 50-50 at the moment for him to drain a senator from the Senate who has incumbency. He's much more likely, in my opinion, to choose someone like Kerry Lake outside of gubernatorial politics by losing, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, honk, honk, or somebody who is like a dark horse, somebody in state level politics. DeSantis would fit that ticket. He's state level. He's a governor. I don't have a problem with the idea. I just think their personalities would clash. Now, I don't think that it would be necessarily amenable to them working together properly, but we'll see what happens. You get Kristi Noem in there. Again, there are others. Ashley, sandwiches aren't the only soppy thing on board. Yeah, exactly. Kamala is known to have some soppy tendencies, especially when she's trying to advance her career. Just imagine that you Kamala Harris is the one that you choose to dick and advance her career. Talk about lowered expectations. The Defamation League. We started a new series called Quantity Over Quality that is comprised of music, 2 minutes in length or shorter, that is as low effort and quality as possible to take up space on YouTube servers. For those masochistic enough to listen, we salute you. I'm gonna pop you on there. I'll take a listen. Do some grindcore or something like that, or some static noise. Be like Static Goat. Sparky, I'd like to see Trump pick Lieutenant Colonel Allen West as his running mate. Establishment Republicans gerrymandered him out of Congress. Also possible someone with a military background. Blake Keller, thoughts on the recent Fuentes Ali allegations? While I have a general understanding of what's being alleged, I don't have any inside knowledge or anything deeper. So I'm going to let other people, I think, tackle that one. Because I don't really get into interpersonal creator drama unless there's something that's really meat on the bones there. And right now it's mostly bones, it seems. I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't like the looks of it, but I'm not going to weigh in further because I'm not going to be able to give you any more intelligent analysis than people that are willing to autistically dive into it for 10 hours at a time. Hank on the road. Hola, Sticks. How long do you think until Los Retardos go after the binary genders, male and female, in some European languages? I have no clue. Probably yesterday, given the situation sociopolitically. Sigilstone, Trump should go completely off the reservation with his VP pick and choose that crazy bastard with the boot on his head that wants free ponies for everyone and mandatory toothbrushing. You mean Vermin Supreme? Didn't he get banned off YouTube some time ago for absolutely no reason? And a follow-up, Trump could also choose Fetterman just so we could watch him have a stroke again. Yeah, I mean, he can do whatever he wants. And if he's denied the nomination, by the way, there's a 50-50 chance that he goes completely rogue and breaks all the toys, at least within the GOP, to punish them. It would be funny. Yeah, you'd be handing the Democrats 4 more years and possibly a majority in the House, but it would be amusing now, wouldn't it? It would teach the GOP unipartists a fucking lesson, maybe. Next news story, we've got CBC, of course, from Canada. They have a problem. They're not using Twitter right now. And Justin Trudeau himself, link in the description, you can watch this. There's a video clip. It's almost 2 minutes of Justin Trudeau responding to this. This is great. It's better than PBS. It's better than the BBC bit. Of course, Elon Musk joking about big black cock as well on that one. It's better than NPR. This is the CBC. It is mostly funded by the Canadian government. 69% of their funding supposedly coming from the Canadian government. Now, originally, the other day, they were simply labeled by Twitter, because it's true. It's not a lie. It's the reality. They were labeled as state-affiliated media. This has happened before. Again, PBS is taking a break. NPR is taking a break. CBS, for a while, took a break on unrelated reasons. They've decided to take a break from Twitter for being labeled state-affiliated, government-funded, even though that's true. And it's very, very funny that Western media outlets have a really big problem with simply being labeled. You're not being demoted like content creators like myself are on multiple platforms. You're not being banned. You're not being punished. The site is simply letting people that interact with your content know that you are partially government funded. Well, they threw a bitch fit. Unlike Sputnik and RT and similar Eastern Bloc groups, Xinhua, for example, that have never said anything about it. They own it like a badge of pride. Xinhua is proud to tell you that the Chinese government funds them. You know, they can't really hide from it. RT is proud to tell you about the fact that the Kremlin is the main source of their power. They are state mouthpieces. So is CBC. It does not matter if your journalism is independent. If you're taking that funding, the two things happen. Number one, the funding is being labeled. Nobody's challenging journalistic independence. Well, except for me, and that's point number two. If you're getting money from a government entity, from the taxpayers, you are naturally going to be reluctant to go up against the reigning party or groups that happen to be in power. You're going to be reluctant. You're going to softball them. Naturally, out of self-preservation, anyone would do this. The people that work at CBC have jobs. They can be fired, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, they're going to be doing that. Trudeau is unhappy, and it's inexplicable. I thought that you stood for the Western concept of openness and transparency. People should have a right to know. So anyway, Twitter did respond to the CBC after they initially labeled them state-affiliated media, which they are. CBC had a problem with that. So Twitter decided to address the problem. The way they address the problem is putting a label, and it is real. You can go to CBC's page, at CBC, of course, on Twitter right now and see it for yourself. This is the label that is currently on the Canadian media network there. 69% government-funded media. The trolling is so sheer. The own of the legacy media here is that they should have done this for fucking NPR and PBS and stuff like that. They should put a ratio up on them with regards to how much funding they get from either the government directly or indirectly, like BBC. Its funding mainly comes from TV licenses. Well, the TV license, if you have a TV, is involuntary. It's effectively a tax, and people have pointed this out. They should definitely get that. So 31% of their funding doesn't come from the Canadian government. A supermajority of your funding coming from a government source makes you state affiliated. It doesn't matter how independent you supposedly are, and you're not at the end of the day. You're reliant upon that taxpayer money to be robbed from the people of Canada by the government and then given to you to pay the salaries, to keep the lights on, to keep the microphones working, et cetera, et cetera. They have a big fucking problem. Anyway, 69. It's very mimetic as well. There's certainly no reach-arounds going on in their offices. By the way, they will quickly realize that their reach is massively reduced by not operating on Twitter, much like CBS did, again, months ago. PBS, NPR, all the others, they'll realize that. Although, if it's state-funded media, because they're guaranteed their pay, Do they care? No, they don't care if they only have one viewer. They don't care if they only have one listener. As long as they make their money, they're perfectly okay. They will probably be pressured by the Canadian government at some point to continue operating on Twitter, though, thus showing, ironically enough, their journalistic integrity does not actually exist. I'm loving it. I'm McLoving this more than almost anything that I've seen so far this year. This is great. Elon Musk is now trolling the Canadian media. Oh, Christ. That anime guy Zero Sticks, can you wish my fiance David a happy anniversary? We've been together for 7 years and engaged for just about 1 year. Well, happy anniversary to y'all. Enjoy your day. Citizen Zero Sticks, did you see that the volcano in Colombia getting ready to pop? Supposedly it's going to be a doozy. I did see about that, yeah. I'll be monitoring the situation as I can. Sigil Stone 17. Musk labeling media outlets as government funded is causing sparks to fly. He should label them with the ethnic religious inclinations of their executives and blow it up into a 5-alarm shitstorm. No, all you do is that you, if they get any funding at all from a government, and you should do this for individuals too, the breadliners wouldn't be happy, you simply put a label on them. Let them rage quit. By the way, it benefits me personally. I no longer have to compete with NPR, PBS, or CBC when I'm talking about current events. That's 3 competitors in the course of a week that have gone and fucked off under the wheels of a bus. I'm loving it. I love it. Absolutely. I only hope that the rest of the legacy media follows suit. And by the way, that would be an excellent bellwether for other sites because they would see, hey, Twitter has lost the entire corporate media. They're no longer using Twitter. And yet Twitter's still there and their subscriber totals are now suffering. Their engagement is lower than it was before. Well then, maybe other sites get it into their mind that they should do the same thing. Oh boy, wouldn't that be goddamn lovely. YouTube should do this. They should label all these sites. Ban them outright. CNN and Fox shouldn't even be on fucking YouTube. YouTube is for individuals, not for corporate conglomerates. Ozzy's Robots, morning from robot-funded media. Clank. Stephen Nizek. CBC, 69% government funded, delivered every afternoon at 4:20. Prime Minister Trudeau, Castro quoted, noise. God blimey, you got a license for that there TV. Dagnabbit 32, Sticks, did you see what Bill Gates just did with both kids and shots? I don't even know if I can mention the acronym before it. In livestock, also, morning clankers. No, I do keep up to date with what Bill Gates is doing, but more topically. Anyway, we've got lots and lots of news. Next news story. Ohio school district allows staff to be armed. Our schools will no longer be soft targets. Superintendent Adam Wickham said most active shooter events take place in gun-free zones. Fact check, mostly correct. Yes, a majority do take place in gun-free zones, schools, etc. Other than gang violence. And that's why he's only mostly correct. If you're talking about mass shootings, yeah, it's usually schools and shit like that. If you're talking about shooting deaths in general, it tends to be urban, it tends to be gang-related, and it tends to have to do with handguns, not the uber-scary AR-15 and the other boogeyman guns, the AK-47 that they continuously harp about. An Ohio school district's new policy allows teachers and school staff to be armed over concerns of response times to active shooters. Uvalde rings a bell. The River Valley School District in rural Marion County joins 22 other school districts in the state that permit approved staff members to carry weapons on campus, according to the Marion Star. See, if I was a teacher, I would want to have a handgun or a revolver. I don't want to count on the one resource officer that may or may not actually exist, depending on the school system there, to guard me. I want to be able to guard myself and my students because I give a damn. And even if you have a teacher that doesn't give a shit, like you get that stereotypical grumpy teacher that fucking hates the kids that are studying that. Like, oh, these little shits. They go home. The first thing they do is they pour themselves a gin and tonic. And then they sit there and they just think about, massacring the kids. They sit there and play violent video games to decompress. At the very least, if someone does attempt to shoot up the school, there will be somebody firing back. Not because they care about the kids, but because they care about themselves. Even a blind egotist can come in useful in some cases. A chaotic neutral or something like that. So I applaud this. All teachers should have the option of being armed. Assuming, think of it this way. The left has a big problem with this. They're telling you that teachers should not be able to be fired for being negligent in their work. In some cases, even being pervy with fucking students. They're just put on administrative leave and they just sit in the break room the whole day. They have to show up, but they just watch TV and eat bonbons and get paid mostly anyway. They're telling you that teachers are sacrosanct, teachers are holy, teachers are perfect, but they don't trust those teachers to actually act properly with a firearm. That's very, very intriguing. Now, the left's views on this have never made sense to me. I mean, I think back to like high school, most of the teachers there, I would have trusted them with a firearm in the class. And certainly if I was a teacher, I'd trust myself with a firearm. Not going to shoot at anything unless I have to, unless it's attempting to shoot me, basically. So, yeah, Broken Prophet is pointing out something interesting. Back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of kids would bring guns to school and put them in their fucking lockers in rural and small town America. And nobody ever had a problem with it. Of course, you're probably not going to massacre people with a bolt-action 22 anyway, but, you know, you could do some damage if you wanted to, but it never happened. I couldn't find one example of that sort of thing happening. Kids never had duels on the playground or anything like that, even though they could have. I think that we should have more ROTC in schools and stuff like that. Kids should be trained on firearms in school. That way, the left's argument, well, only people that are trained should be able to own firearms. Okay, the point taken. We'll just taxpayer fund the training and make it mandatory. There we go. Problem solved. Marshalize the population a little bit more. I'm actually in support of that. Give them medical training too. You know, conscientious objector. Okay, then they can study field medicine, communications and stuff. Play with the shortwave radio. Learn something that's actually useful in life. What the fuck are you learning that's useful in your advanced math class unless you intend to be an accountant or a mathematician? Are you ever going to use those polynomials and shit in the real world? No, not going to use them at all. Not unless you go into engineering or something. The Defamation League. Follow up to previous Super Chat. For those who actually like good music, check out our demo tracks Tavo and Variant. What would that be? Variant Omega? Variant Alpha? I'm not exactly sure what that symbol is. My apologies. I'll pop it up on screen. People can copy it out and paste it in. Julian, save everyone's hearing and give the teachers suppressed 575 grain 458 SOCOM AR-15 death machines. No, just give it. I mean, even a 22 is better than nothing, you know. 22 short. I'd rather have that than just have my bare hands. If somebody comes in shooting, there's a chance I hit him in the eye. No, just give him a Glock 17 or something. Maxwell JW, we're recreating the long-lost continent of Mu with our waste. What a time to be alive. Yes, exactly. We've got a Texas-sized trash continent swirling around slowly in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And there are a billion hermit crabs there. Sigil Stone again. More Ohio news. Grand jury declined to bring charges against the cops that pumped 40 rounds into Jalen Walker last year. Yeah, I did see that. I'll be looking into that story. Meanwhile, they are attempting to bring charges against that, 85-year-old man who killed the 16-year-old black kid who showed up at the wrong address. I have a feeling that maybe something's being left out of the reporting on that one. Could be dementia on one hand. Could be that the youth was doing something wrong before he got shot. We'll see what happens. Ozzy's Robots. The left wants Antifa and trans armed. The rest disarmed. I want everyone armed, unless they're a criminal lunatic or they're currently incarcerated or they're such a threat that you need to incarcerate them. Well, bring back asylums. Problem solved. Keep things simple. Next news story. House GOP majority has accomplished much in its first 100 days by Representative Tom Emmer. Of course, he's a Republican representative, and so he has a skewed, biased approach to how he analyzes what the House Republicans have done. I will give him one bit of credit, and then I will also criticize the House Republicans. The House Republicans, to their credit, have actually done much of what they said they wanted to do. They have convened investigations into J6, et cetera, the Trump indictment. They have brought things up for votes that McCarthy explicitly promised Gates and others they would bring up for vote. Whether or not they pass or not, the promise was, hey, we will have a full floor vote. You'll get a chance to make your case, and then it gets voted up or down. They have done that. That's more than most people, I think, expected of a Republican House. It's arguably more than I expected. I expected McCarthy would half-ass it and slow walk it on a lot of these things. While I'm not going to like the dude, he's still a neocon. He's a unipartyist. He self-sabotaged several GOP candidates in 2022, so I can't like him. I can't support him. He has stuck by his guns in a big way when it comes to putting things forth for a vote, procedural changes, etc. On that, the House Republicans have done well. They've exceeded expectations. Certainly the expectations of the black-pilled, they've exceeded already. Here's the problem. What actual on-the-ground pragmatic result has happened from those actions? So what has actually changed other than they are doing a couple of investigations that are important and they did promise to make? Nothing. Nothing has changed. Yes, they have blocked Joe Biden's IRS hires budgetarily. We will see if that actually holds up to scrutiny when the final battle begins over the subsequent budget. Of course, that's not going to happen for some time. Biden refuses to give ground. The House Republicans refuse to give ground. We're looming towards possibly a shutdown. We'll see in the end if that gets negotiated off the table. It should. It should be a sticking point that is it should be a line in the sand that the GOP is unwilling to cross. They should send Biden a letter right now saying, look, you're not going to get your IRS expansion. It's not going to happen. The budget will remain the same. We will not vote for any budget that includes that. You can go fuck yourself. You can go ahead and negotiate on other things, but this is too important to too many people. We don't support it. We oppose it completely, and we're going to stand our ground. But they're Republicans. Asking them to stand their ground is like asking an elephant to stand there like a statue while the mice run around. We shall see whether any actual change occurs as the result of the things that they're doing. At least they're trying. It's more than we can expect from the modern GOP. Look, there aren't enough MAGA in the House Republicans to guide the entirety of their congressional proceedings. If there were, I would expect them to go all in, and I would expect the budget to be blocked, and the IRS agents get blocked, and so forth. They block continuous wasteful spending for infrastructure or whatever. I would expect that. I can't really expect that right now. They're run by a neocon that pretends on TV to be a half-assed MAGA. We will be seeing what happens. Yes, Sparky brings up a good point. McCarthy may be sliding on J6 prisoners. Yes, that is another thing. We've got a bunch of people in prison for extended periods without a trial for, in many cases, nonviolent crimes. That is a big problem for me. Sparky, during hunting season until the mid-70s, the kids typically would put their rifles in the corner of the classroom in rural USA. No problems. Yeah, except that the poor kid, his weapon isn't as cool as the rich kid's weapon, so maybe they get to fighting. But they never shot each other over it, I noticed. They had much more self-control somehow. Crossover Maniac, did you hear about Donald Trump Jr. and the GOP bending the knee for Anheuser-Busch and begging conservatives to end the boycott? I talked about that yesterday. I have a nuanced view on that particular issue. Fundamentally, Don Jr. is correct. If the company is mainly donating to GOP candidates and not, by the way, just to unipartyists, it doesn't really make sense to boycott them. You risk losing their money. I keep hearing the main complaint about that coming from the "we must win at any cost" fans of DeSantis, saying, well, Trump can't win. We don't have a problem with him, but he can't win. DeSantis can. We must back him. We must close ranks. We must win at any cost because Biden is evil, which, I mean, I agree with. But then you're saying you should also protest a company that is donating to you disproportionately. As far as Bud Light goes, I can't boycott them because I don't drink beer. That's the limitation on my capabilities here. I wouldn't drink it either. If I were drinking it at all, I would say, I mean, come on, your ESG bullshit, it doesn't impress me. I'll drink Foster's or something like that. I'll drink something that tastes actually like beer instead of tasting like water. I would note that Anheuser-Busch has a lot more products than just Budweiser and Bud Light, though. So in some cases, you might not have a lot of other choices. Not all parts of the country have a million microbreweries like New England. Jesus loves you. Just want to let everyone know that we lose 22 veterans per day to suicide, and we lose 4 times as many people to suicide as combat. Our own leaders are 400% more likely to make you end your own life than the enemy is to kill you. No one ever join. Good point. Yeah, we are too busy taking care of Ukrainian partisans or illegals to care about our veterans, many of which are homeless and down and out with PTSD, etc. And it's a farce. Trash Panda, El Salvador's president managed to completely turn around the country, and he had MS-13 to deal with. All it takes is the will to act. Yeah, we don't have anyone, unfortunately, in U.S. leadership at the moment who's willing to act pragmatically. Those that are mentally aware are in it for themselves entirely and in it for globalism. And the rest are goddamn morons, like Joe Biden himself. He doesn't even know where he is half the time. Next news story. Jordan McGillis, can Chicago survive Brandon Johnson? That's the incoming mayor-elect replacing Lori Lightfoot. Here is my nuanced take on this particular issue. Yeah, Chicago will survive in the same sense that Detroit still exists. It is still a major city, just not as major as it could be if its population hadn't declined by, 400,000 people over the last few decades or something. Yeah, they could keep the streetlights on. Chicago is, though, in a different position from Detroit. Hear me out here. The population is much larger. That's number one. It's not a monoculture built solely around like one or two industries like Detroit was at its peak. It was built around automotive on the Great Lakes, so you could ship cars around by not just train lines, but also by the Great Lakes itself, by ship. It was much more efficient. It was a central location for when the United States primarily absorbed its own goods. And of course, he wanted to export to Canada, take them up the Hudson, export them to Europe, and so forth. Since that has ended, the coasts mainly are where a lot of the industry is, a lot of the non-heavy industry anyway, it's stuff related to trade and basic manufacturing. Chicago's a lot bigger, though. And here's the thing. Chicago has been run by corrupt machine politics and been filled with crime for a very, very long time. Brandon Johnson is the same as Lori Lightfoot, only his physiognomy is better. He just doesn't look like an even sicklier version of Gollum. That's the only difference. His policies are the same, and it doesn't surprise me that he won against Vallas in the end. Not that that alternative was much better. Vallas was a Democrat. Vallas was a liberal. He was just less of a leftoid than Brandon Johnson is, by a marginal degree. The city won't change. And the city survived Lori Lightfoot and the people of Chicago. Apparently, they're putting ideology before pragmatism. Many of them don't care about the crime rate because they don't live in a crime-blighted area, or they vote based on the color of their skin. They're racists, effectively. They voted for Brandon Johnson in the end because he's black, not because he was qualified. But it doesn't really matter. Now, they did the same with Lori Lightfoot, and she basically didn't fail on an ideological level. It wasn't about I talked about this months ago. It's not about the crime. It's not about the ideology. The reason why she was shoved out was because she was a hypocrite and because she was optically poor. She didn't have the communication skills necessary to really push herself back into re-election. That's why she came in a distant third, despite being the incumbent. Oh, how humiliating. By the way, you haven't heard much from her since then, have you? She's been licking her wounds this entire time and probably licking her lesbian lover in various orifices. Brandon Johnson is not going to change the way Lori Lightfoot did business. But the people of Chicago don't give a fuck about that. They don't care about the crime. They only care about the fact that Lori Lightfoot was an embarrassment to them. So they kicked her out, and then they elected a person who's Lori Lightfoot without being Lori Lightfoot. Nothing will change in Chicago. Chicago will survive. It'll continue to be a hole of bullshit. It'll continue to be a crap shit fest. And yeah, nothing will change. We'll see what happens after several years when another election occurs. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Thank you. Sparky, doesn't Anheuser-Busch donate to Dems too? FAB, fuck Anheuser-Busch. Yes, but disproportionately to Republican candidates, including some MAGA ones. Orwell's Goon. Check out Charles Haywood. He advocates Red Caesar, who controls the military but purges 95% of the rest of FedGov, as well as absorbing all LW financial assets via Treasury. Man with the key to my heart. Yeah, that'd be an interesting idea. Purging 95% of the federal government might not be enough. Maybe 97% would be more appropriate. Federal government really only has 3 jobs: administer the legal system at the federal level, engage in diplomacy, and oversee a military. No other federal laws really need to apply. States can handle the rest. They should be constrained more too. Trash Panda, I'm proud to say I've been going to the gym almost every day for about a month now and have already lost 10 pounds. Good for you. Self-improvement. That's the name of the Clank game. That's what I'm talking about. Now you just got to learn how to cook yummy food. I cooked, by the way, a masala last night. Really heavily curried, etc. Green beans and potatoes and peas and all the other good things in life. It came out amazing. I also tossed some jasmine rice into it. That cooked up in the fluids itself. It's really good. I'm having leftovers tonight because Liz wants to cook salmon stuff. I think salmon pasta or something. It was good. She cooked some last night, but she used a kind of salmon that she didn't like as much, so she couldn't eat it. And it was really tasty. I would have eaten the food that she made, but I already made this big-ass pot of masala, and it was great. And I'm like, okay, I've got a choice. I can stick to one of these 2 meals, or I can combine something that is very spicy and heavily curried with salmon. I don't know that that's a good idea for my gastrointestinal system. I have a cast iron stomach, but I know my limitations. I do actually still have some, so. And then the final news story of the day. Blinken, that's the Secretary of State who you rarely hear about because he's basically a no-show, warns Sudan's rivals after a U.S. diplomatic convoy comes under fire. The battling factions have both claimed to have made gains amid airstrikes and fighting in the capital Khartoum and strife across the country. Yes, the 2 generals that were effectively co-running Sudan like consuls, a la like the Roman Empire period, have gone to war against each other. Hundreds of people are now dead. Really, instability affecting the only significant developed area in your country is not usually a good omen. The RSV and the actual, well, not elected, but the de facto government are still fighting. It's not just in Khartoum now. They're fighting elsewhere, although the fighting is most fierce there. There are airstrikes. They're literally bombing their own capital city. Just to get an idea of how dire the situation is, they're bombing their own capital at the moment. And there are claims that it's a CIA coup, that the RSV was going to be pushed aside, purged, etc. And the CIA is involved. This typically happens when leftist groups don't get their way. So I'm skeptical of that. I don't think that this is a foreign coup. I think this is a situation where there is no stable leadership whatsoever, and they're just going to kill each other until somebody comes out on top. Unfortunately, which would you rather be under? This tin horn dictator or that tin horn dictator? That's the choice for the Sudanese people right now. Now, of course, if they had a martial population, they could rise up and defend themselves and kill both of these generals and probably reestablish order. But they don't have that. Now, do they? Very interesting. Such things always seem to happen in nations where the average Joe public doesn't have any weapon more advanced than a machete. Javin, do you think in order for CBDC to work, it needs to be backed by commodities like gold and silver? If you mean a central bank digital currency, it can't work at all. It will be imposed. They're clearly intending to do that. It'll be as worthless as fiat. It'll be even worse and less stable. And then no privacy will be involved either. I will never use it. You should never use it. Do not invest in it. Do not go to any business requiring it. Boycott it completely. We'll cut the head off the snake and hope it doesn't regrow like a hydra. For that one, that's definitely a road too far. And Javin, do you think that gold and silver contain metaphysical properties? Just curious why mankind selected those 2 metals to be held at such high value. Because they're shiny. Gold is incorruptible, more or less. You can chafe it up into a really fine powder and dissolve it in certain acids, but it's effectively, it doesn't blemish or anything like that. It's shiny. It can be polished off and reflect light. Silver, it glows like the moon. I like silver. I don't like gold myself. I like silver and garnet, and that's it. That's the only kind of jewelry I wear. Garnet being my birthstone. Also just looks cool. I think it, goes well with my overall tone. And then silver. I don't consider silver corrupting. I consider gold to be corrupting. It's so valuable. It's valued so high that simply having it around you can harm your psyche, I think. So I avoid gold like the plague. I only wear silver. I have a bit of silver stacked in Rutland. Ozzy's Robots. Anheuser's support of Dylan is a line in the sand. He's a groomer. Scoring ESG points is like supporting Jesse Jackson's extortion coalition of the 80s. And it'll similarly die off in time. Yes, absolutely. You should not drink Budweiser products. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, it's like, if they do donate mainly to non-uniparty Republicans, there is at least a point to be made on not boycotting them. It would be better, I think, to convince them to retract what they're doing and say, look, come on. You're already selling poison, number one. Your fan base in the U.S. is mainly people who do not like Dylan Mulvaney. Maybe you need to rethink this unless you want a Pabst Blue Ribbon to become America's beer. Sparky. Blinken and co. are attempting regime change in Sudan, but both sides may be pro-Russian. Red Sea naval base. Yeah, that's in Djibouti, I think, actually. Yes, both factions are nuts. It doesn't matter who backs them. They're both going to commit genocide probably when they win. So, honestly, if I was there, I would just flee. I would say, fuck it. I would just leave. Sigil Stone, did you see the president of Uganda issued a travel warning about traveling to the U.S. for extreme gang violence and being full of homosexuals? No, I didn't. I do like how people are trying to dunk on the U.S. pretending that it's a massively violent nation. It's not, pro tip. If you avoid a handful of blighted inner city areas, the rest of the U.S., like rural and small town U.S., for the most part is as safe as being here in Western Europe. So when people are trying to dunk on the United States, usually because the Chinese have asked them to do so as a joke, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. By the way, there are plenty of homosexuals in Uganda. It's just that they get executed if they're found out as being homosexual. Interesting. Yeah, Citizen Zero's got an interesting point. The Jesse Jackson grift didn't die. True. Yeah, I mean, it changes form over time. There will always be grifting, though. It's almost mafia tactics. It's like, yeah, see? Got a good business going on here. Yeah, it should be a shame if it burned down. Why don't you buy some insurance? We can make sure nobody does that. Yeah, that's basically how Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, etc. operate. BLM does the same thing. Josh, Trump, I support suicide prevention. Yeah, if he were to come out and say that, a lot of his opponents would die the next day. Dana Lee, did you hear about Bayer suing a few Missouri farmers for using older pesticide and saving and replanting soybeans? When will GMOs stop stealing land? I didn't hear about that, but I did hear years ago there was a case where Monsanto corn had accidentally fallen off a truck at the edge of someone else's field. And it had cross-pollinated with their normal crop. And Monsanto came in and said, okay, all the corn is ours. You have to pay us damages. And I think that they actually won, even though it was literally their own fault because of the proprietary nature of their seed lines. I think we should go back to heirloom varieties and rotation crop planting like the Mexicans are. I think that they've got the right idea. We should kick these morons out of the agricultural business entirely. Oomph Love, have you seen the Ali Akbar scandal? AF is in shambles at the moment. Yes, I have, actually. Just a second here. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I have seen that, but I don't know enough about it to weigh in. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go offline because I've got other things to do, including reheating the rest of that masala that I made. I might add other shit to it. I added a little bit of coconut milk, too. I might add a little bit more of that and some lentils, actually, and just reheat it. Rebrew it, actually. You can do that over and over if you really want to. You can have a forever stew if you really want to, although it's not the healthiest thing in the world. I'm going to add even more spice to it, even fucking more chili and cayenne. That's how I roll. I want to feel the snot dripping down my nose so that I can imagine that I'm a liberal in 2016 watching the election results. Anyways, everyone, I thank you to the over 5,000 people that tuned in. I will be live tomorrow at roughly the same time with more news topics and more fun. We will be clanking. One last one, Sparky, before your time, but there used to be a pro wrestler billed as the man from Sudan, Abdullah the Butcher. Maybe he could solve the Sudan crisis. Yeah, send the Iron Sheik over there. He'll take care of shit. Just give him some camels and some footmen. He'll occupy the whole country really quick, and then he'll suplex them. That's about all. Peace out.